All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Sandy Barr. I'm the chapter director for Sierra Club in Arizona. I use she, her pronouns, and I live here in Central Phoenix on the traditional lands of the Acoma, Atom, and Pipash. And tonight we're going to talk about bills. And there are a number of bills we'll talk about. More bills than you'll be able to talk to legislators about, but I wanted to give you a good, overview of some of the bills that you can talk to legislators about. I encourage the groups to really choose, 3 or 4, I guess maybe at the most 5 bills to talk about. Most of the time you will have 15 minutes, many times maybe a half hour, but trying to cover more than that will be difficult. You can always leave behind information and follow up on other bills. So your groups hopefully will focus on trying to identify a handful of bills to focus on Environmental Day. All right, if I can get it to advance now, there we go. Wanted to just mention that Sierra Club, we are centering our work on the principles of equity, justice, and inclusion, and have adopted the HEMAS principles for democratic organizing. That's how I am going to try to conduct this briefing, but also these are key principles for our work on Environmental Day. We want everyone who participates to feel welcome, and that we are working together in solidarity. So I think it's going to be a great day, and just keeping those in mind as we move forward with our work. All right, so some of you have probably already heard this part, but I just wanted to give a brief update on where we've gone so far at the legislature. So it did start on January 9th. They always start the second Monday in January. And if they end in 100 days, it will end around April 22nd. It's hard to know at this point if they will end in 100 days. Last year, it went till the end of June, so well past 100 days. We heard the state of the state from the governor. She talked about resiliency and water quite a lot. And so that was refreshing. And she also included funding for water and the Heritage Fund in her budget. The committees have been meeting. We have seen a lot of bad bills advance so far. And I should have added, the legislature is now in the process of passing a budget. It's what they call a skinny budget. It has none of the funding priorities that the governor included, and really is inadequate to meet the needs of our state. And they'll probably pass that on Monday. So these are some of the positive water bills that have been introduced and that we can talk to legislators about. They have not been scheduled for hearings, and that's one of the things that you can talk to your legislators about and say, it would be nice to see some of these positive water bills on an agenda in the House or Senate. Representative Gail Griffin chairs the House Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee, and Senator Sina Kerr chairs the Senate Natural Resources, Energy, and Water Committee, and they both have been gatekeepers to strong water legislation, and unfortunately have been unwilling to even put it on agendas. The first bill, House Bill 2164, and its companion bill in the Senate 1449, that allows the Department of Water Resources Director to consider the future impacts of irrigation in declaring an irrigation non-expansion area. And an irrigation non-expansion area is an area where no new acres of land can be irrigated once it's established. That is something that happened recently up by the Kingman area, and is a way to at least stop further harm. It doesn't address what's already happening, but it right now the director can only look at what's happening currently, and not what is projected to happen relative to groundwater mining. So this would be a positive step in the right direction. The next two, 2165 and 1450, they would require that any subdivision, no matter where it was in the state, would have to have an adequate water supply. Currently, they just have to indicate whether there's an adequate water supply or not, but they can go ahead and develop without an adequate water supply. So again, good from an environmental perspective, but really a consumer protection measure too. 2278, that is one to limit new wells and a couple of very important, oops, I have imperiled Ivers. I dropped the R. Imperiled rivers, the Upper San Pedro and the Verde Valley basins. And then the last one is a water quality bill. I thought it was important to include it, and it would authorize the Department of Environmental Quality to establish water quality standards for PFAS. And these are those persistent chemicals. They're ubiquitous, and they harm human health. So one other bill I wanted to mention and highlight is a bill we've been working on with the Sustainable Water Network for 4 years now. And this is a bill that allows water to be designated for a river. So people who have water rights, they can take those water rights and sever and transfer them to the river. And beneficial use is defined as the ecological water needs is beneficial use versus having to use it for irrigation or some kind of industrial use. And there's a requirement for assessment as well. And when I send out the information tomorrow, again, about the packets, there will be an individual handout on this one if it's one you decide to focus on. And then there are a number of bills that are harmful from a water perspective. House Bill 2056 basically says that our desert washes, they are not protected if they're on private property, and it seeks to exempt them from Clean Water Act protections as well. They can't really do that. It's unconstitutional to do that, but it is in the bill, and I expect it will move along. Our main concern about that bill is really the message that it sends, that these desert washes are not important, and they're critically important. They're important for recharging our groundwater, for providing water to our perennial waters, for flood control. They help to reduce sedimentation, and they're also critically important for wildlife. 2411, there is one of several bills that seeks to force Scottsdale in some way to provide water to Rio Verde, even though they don't have it, and they're not obligated to there are at least 3 bills I know of that are seeking to do that. And then the last one on this list has to do with temporary non-expansion areas, and it allows establishment of these temporary non-expansion areas. And really it is something that gives the impression it's doing something when it isn't. But these areas are established for 5 years. They would only limit the irrigation of additional acreage and do nothing to address groundwater pumping on the existing acres. And so that has already moved out of committee, and we are opposing it. And there's a little bit more explanation of that on the fact sheet, but we don't need temporary measures. We need measures that provide consistent protections for our groundwater. All right, I'm going to shift now to some climate and clean energy bills. And I'm starting with the good bills. So there are 3 bills that specifically address climate change. 2279 and 1537 repeal provisions in the statutes that say that no agency can do anything to reduce greenhouse gas emissions unless the legislature specifically tells it so. So unless the legislature gives direction and passes a law and says, hey, Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, you should reduce carbon emissions related to vehicles, they can't do anything. And then, so that would repeal that and give agencies flexibility in being able to address climate change. And then Senate Bill 1509 establishes a climate resiliency planning group to develop a plan for Arizona on how to address what we're already seeing relative to climate change and plan for the future. It requires coordination among the various agencies. This is something that if the legislature won't act on it, I think that Governor Hobbs could do through her new resiliency office. So perhaps we will see something develop there. And then some other positive bills, they're clean energy bills. House Bill 2405 and 1522. These are 2 bills that establish a study committee to gather more information on community choice energy. And community choice energy basically allows municipalities, cities to directly buy electricity for those in their community. And in places that have adopted these programs, it has resulted in a lot more clean energy coming online. So this wouldn't establish a program, but it would establish a study committee and perhaps help us figure out a good model for Arizona. 2519 is also a study committee, and it's on agrivoltaics. Agrivoltaics is basically solar panels with agriculture, and it would look at, renewable energy production as part of that. And then 1399 is about transition. It's more about economic transition, but part of the economic transition is clean energy, and it is an appropriations bill for communities that have been affected by coal plant closures. And it appropriates $60 million, and that could go to cities, towns, counties, and tribes. There are several electric vehicle bills, some of which were introduced in previous sessions. These are bills that at least 3 of them made it out of the Senate last year, but died in the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, this year they are mostly Democratic bills that don't have the same bipartisan support, and so it will be a lot harder to move these bills forward. They require various things from ADOT developing a zero emission vehicle program, which again, that is something that perhaps the governor can do through executive order. Requires 1443 requires prioritizing purchase of these zero emissions vehicles, and then 1442 is a study committee, and the first one, 2241, it has a pilot program for a charging program, but also it requires all new construction to be EV ready. And there is one bad electric vehicle bill, and I can get people information on that if you're interested, but it is one to shut down the utilities on doing any EV programs. All right, and then let's move to democracy. There are some positive pro-voter bills, including reestablishing the permanent early voting lists. Remember, it used to be if you were on the early voting list, you didn't get removed from that early voting list and you would get your ballots each cycle. This says that if you don't vote early in 2 cycles, that you get purged from the list. And there are quite a few folks who would get purged that way. There's a bill this session to make it only 1 cycle, but this bill just restores it to the way it was before last year. And then there's an automatic voter registration bill as well, for when you get your driver's license or renew it, or other non-driver identification. And again, these types of bills are just to increase voter turnout, which I think most of us would, maybe all of us on here, but I think most people think it's a good idea to increase voter turnout. There are so many anti-voter bills, anti-democracy bills this session that we can't even list them, let alone talk about all of them. So I just included a few. They're really trying to shut down early voting in various ways. And I think I heard that that the Republican Party is challenging or trying to get the Supreme Court to look at early voting again as well. But they're looking to make it as inconvenient as possible. Of course, the first bill, if you only had precinct-based polling locations, you couldn't have early ballot locations where people could go and vote or drop off their ballots early. The requiring all ballots to be hand counted, that would take so long and it would be a lot less accurate. And so that was a bill introduced last year and it's up again this year. 2415 is the one that I mentioned that would say you're off the early voting list if you fail to vote early in 1 election cycle. So, say, I don't know, something happens, you have some kind of tragedy where you just aren't able to vote, they would drop you off that list. And then 1141, more voter ID when you drop off your early ballot, and 1170 prohibits those drop boxes that they have for early voting. And no legislative session is complete without the attacks on direct democracy. The legislature cannot amend the Constitution on its own, so these are referrals, but SCR 1002 would require 60% approval for all proposed constitutional amendments. Ironically, this proposed constitutional amendment would only require 50% plus one to pass. And then SCR 1015 would, if passed, would require a proportionate number of signatures from every legislative district. So for an initiative, you have to get 10% of the people who voted in the last gubernatorial election to sign your petitions, but that's, you know, statewide, and this would require 10% in every legislative district, and basically allowing one legislative district to have veto power over something even getting to the ballot. So that one is a huge barrier to getting on the ballot, and the one above it is a barrier to getting something passed. And the thing about those last two bills, of course, is that they bypass the governor. You know, they would go straight to the ballot, so they can do it with, you know, just a majority at the legislature. And they had some success with that 60% requirement in this last cycle with for measures that include taxes. So I think they're pretty emboldened to refer more things to the ballot to attack our ability to hold the legislature accountable by engaging in initiatives and referenda. All right, and here's a positive bill that there's also bipartisan support for, and that's funding for the State Parks Heritage Fund. It would restore the $10 million that the State Parks Heritage Fund is supposed to get. It would take those dollars from the lottery, and it would be an ongoing appropriation versus a one-time appropriation. This appropriation is also in the governor's budget, so hopefully we'll be able to see that go through. It's a great fund. It helps with local parks and trails and protecting cultural resources and historic preservation. So those were really, that's just a quick overview of some of the bills we'll talk about. We hope you will enjoy your visit to the Capitol. If you're not coming on Environmental Day, we hope you'll come another day and speak up and let legislators know that you care about these issues. Sometimes it seems like it's, you know, they're not listening, and I guess sometimes they're not, but over time it does make a difference. And it's really important to the legislators who do support the issues we care about to also hear from you all. And with that, I will take questions. I think I'm going to stop screen sharing so I can actually see you all. All right. Any questions? You can raise your hand, I guess, now because I can see you. Okay, Christy.
I apologize. I'm simultaneously trying to cook dinner, so I can't remember the bill number. But the bill you mentioned, and I've read about it in the legislative updates you've been sending, that would temporarily restrict some of the water usage. like, I totally understand the concept of we need long-term solutions. Absolutely. But is there nothing to be gained by a short-term solution, or is it the fear of once there's like a Band-Aid in place, then do you know which bill I'm saying?
Yes, I do know. It's the temporary non-expansion area bill. And
Correct.
I understand what you're saying. A couple things about it. And yes, I can share this slide deck, Gary, by the way. A couple things about it. First of all, right now, the director of the Department of Water Resources can establish an irrigation non-expansion area that would limit groundwater pumping, but it's not, it's not this, temporary thing. And one of the things that we look for in policies is something that is sustainable. I mean, so there's a pause on new areas, in new irrigated areas for 5 years, well, then immediately it opens up again. The other thing I should mention is that in that bill, it makes it a lot harder to establish them. It requires 50% of the irrigators, so there's a higher bar for even establishing. And there are so many bills that would actually help, that pushing through a bill like this, again, it creates an illusion, and people in those areas, might think that their groundwater is protected when it's not. Does that help? Okay. All right. And I'll try to make sure that there's a little maybe stronger talking points on that. So yes, I will post it on the YouTube channel. And yes, I will share the slide deck. And Anika, I see your hand is up.
Hi, I have 2 questions. The first one was, what does SCR mean?
Oh, you know what? Those are great. That's a great question. So in front of the bills, you'll see SB, which is Senate bill. You'll see HB, which is House bill. And you'll also see things like SCR, which is Senate concurrent resolution. And you'll see HCR, that's House concurrent resolution. You'll also sometimes see SCM, Senate concurrent memorial. And the concurrent part means it's for both houses. Sometimes you'll see just like SM or HM, and that means House memorial or Senate memorial. Memorials are messages to Congress or somebody trying to, instead of writing a letter, they decide to pass something. And you have to watch too, some of the concurrent resolutions are just messages and others are referring things to the ballot. So good question. Did that answer it?
Yes, that did. Thank you. My other question was, when you talked about the State Parks Heritage Fund and you said that there was like $10 million that went to the lottery that was supposed to go to the State Park Heritage Fund. And I was wondering what was going on with that and why that happened in the first place.
Very good question. Yeah, I'll just do a quick history. And I can't remember if that handout on the Heritage Fund has this, but the State Parks and Game and Fish Heritage Fund programs were established in 1990 by the voters. The voters passed an initiative that said every year $10 million would go to game and fish for, you know, work on endangered species and protecting habitat and various programs. And then 10 million would go to state parks for trails, for historic preservation, cultural resource protection, those types of things. When Jan Brewer became governor in Arizona, they used the fact that Arizona and we did have tight economic conditions. This was 2009, 2010. The legislature passed, and then Governor Brewer signed a measure that totally eliminated the State Parks Heritage Fund. It was gone. And so it took about 10 years to actually get it back, but we only got it back in name. There was no funding attached to it. And so like last year it got $5 million. And so we're trying to get it back in the statute that it will get that $10 million from the lottery every year.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for the question. I don't know, Voker Kajam.
That's good. That's close. That's very good, actually. Hi, I'm Jim. Just two real quick questions. When you're explaining the CR, the concurrent resolution, is that different than from a continuing resolution? Or don't we have those in the state?
We don't have continuing resolutions. I know what you're talking about. In Congress, they pass continuing resolutions to keep the government going when they don't, you know, they don't have a budget, right?
Okay.
And we don't have those at the state legislature.
Okay, I'm not from Arizona, so sometimes I sound pretty stupid about certain things here. And one other thing, you mentioned you're also going to make this meeting available on YouTube and a slide deck. I didn't hear some of that. Is that what was said?
Yeah. We'll make all of that available. And if you're signed up for Environmental Day, tomorrow I'm going to be sending out the second set of messages, and it'll include links to all of the briefings that we have done to date, including this one. It will include a link to the folder with the packet, but I'll also attach the fact sheets with the bills that we just talked about. And it will include your individualized district schedule. So we have a general schedule, but then each district, unless we didn't have success with getting the legislators to respond, will also include the times of your meetings and that type of thing. So
if I'm not signed up to attend Environmental Day, can I still get on that list to get all that information?
You can. It would be helpful if you sent me an email, and I will. I'll send it to you.
And your best email address?
I'm going to put it in the chat right now. Yeah, I'm going to put it in the chat.
Great,
yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, who else do we have? Oh, Jana is asking about lunch. And we are providing lunch. It's a simple lunch. It's burros, and it's there are two options: vegetarian, vegan, or bean and cheese. We don't have any meat options. So, you know, yeah, that's what's available. if you have other particular requirements, you know, there are some places near the Capitol where you can grab something. Yeah. And there are going to be some snacks too. You know, just like little, I don't know, like granola bars and stuff like that too. So I'm just looking in the chat to see if there's anything else. No, I don't see any other questions. Oh, Mary Ann.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, I was going to bring my own lunch, but there's going to be a place where the Sierra Club is set up across from the Capitol and the Senate where we would go, or?
Yeah, so this year, because there's all this work going on, you know, the Rose Garden area where we usually meet, we are across from the Capitol in an area that is called Wesley Bolin Plaza. So Wesley Bolin Plaza is just to the east of the Capitol complex. So you just across 17th Avenue. And we're going to be having our program. There's like a bowl area there. We'll have our program there. When you register, which will be about 11:30, we'll tell you where to go pick up the burros, but it's going to be right next to where the registration is. So
We're going to register again for our time up there?
well, basically what we do is we have the registration list of everyone who said they're coming, and we'll just have you check off your name, grab a name badge. We have name badges for everyone who registered, and a packet.
Okay.
And that's also how you'll, you know, find out about where to go to get your lunch too. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
There is parking right there at Wesley Bolin Plaza, but I think I included this in the packet, but I can send it out again. There's also parking over to the west of the Capitol, and then there's a bus stop like right there at 17th Avenue and Adams. So it's right on a bus line too. Richard, you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, when will we find out if we are scheduled with a meeting with one of our legislatures? Because you said they haven't responded yet, right? Or
You'll find out when I send that out tomorrow, but I'm trying to
Okay.
remember, which district are you again, Richard?
5, same as you, 5.
Yeah, we have a meeting at 12:15 with Senator Alston. So
Oh, yeah, okay.
that'll
Okay.
go out tomorrow, but just with our senator.
Yeah, okay, so that happens after, I thought they were gonna happen in the morning, but that was the only time she had, is that what happened, or? That's
Yeah.
fine, I don't care.
That's
Yeah,
what happens. Like sometimes the meetings conflict with the program, but I tell people it's so hard to get meetings with legislators. Sometimes just take whatever they have
Yeah.
available.
Exactly, I agree. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So we'll meet, where would I meet you at the east side of the Capitol, where everybody else is meeting, or?
Alex is going to be your team leader,
Okay.
and he'll tell you where to meet. Yeah.
Yeah, I've met him before. Okay, thank you.
Yep, for sure. Okay, I guess it's, I think you said your first name is Jim, right?
Right, that's good enough. You don't have to try to pronounce the last one. I don't drive, so I was planning not to attend. I recently learned Frank Koppel's going, and I may be able to get a ride. I haven't talked with him yet. If I do show up and I'm not registered, Am I out of luck, or can I still register at the last minute?
Yeah, no, we can, there are usually a few people who don't show up and a few people who haven't registered, so it should be okay. We're right at kind of the maximum we're supposed to have, but we, like I said, I feel like we're, unless we, had like another 40 people show up, we'll be okay. So
Okay,
yeah, it should be fine.
thank you.
Yeah. Karen, yeah, we have that person in the count. They won't have a name tag at this point because we already printed them, but we have a bunch of blank ones for people. Just like there are a number of folks where they said, look, I'm going to have 10 people with me, but they didn't have them register individually. And so we'll have like blank name tags and they can just write in their name. But they're in the count. So that's important. So we appreciate that. And yeah, there is a bus from Tucson. I don't know if anyone is on here that is coming from Southern Arizona. If you don't have the link for the bus, just again, email me. I put my email in there and I can send it to you. You should get registered fairly soon so they can, they know you're coming and they can get you details. I know there's still some room. It's over half full now, but I know there's still some room on the bus. And like, even if you're from, further south and you might want to drive as far as Tucson and grab the bus the rest of the way. Let's see, I don't think I see any other hands, and I don't.
I got information, I think today, from the person who's coordinating the bus from Tucson. It gives all the details, 6 o'clock we're meeting, where you can park and everything. So it was very concise. His first name is Isaiah, the person who is, yeah.
Yeah, Tucson Audubon took that on. We're all pitching in on it, but they agreed to coordinate the registration, and Isaiah has been super helpful. So glad that you got that today. So yeah, if you're not,
can we contribute to, the transportation up there, or just make a donation to Sierra Club?
Well, we have 4 groups that pitched in on it. So your contributions are always welcome, but you could also, contribute to Tucson. It's Tucson Audubon, Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection, Defend Our Future, and Sierra Club. So
okay, thank you.
Yep. All right. Excellent. Well, hopefully this was helpful and gave you a little bit of a idea of some of the bills. I mean, it's important to mention what the bills do, but I think when you talk to legislators, the main thing is that they get why you care about it. And so I encourage people, tell your story, tell, why it is that you're there that day. Some people have asthma or have family that does, and they care about making sure the air is cleaner. Some people are, very concerned about the climate and whether or not it will continue to be inhabitable here, and what it's doing to our rivers and streams, and and that you really are. I know, for example, I don't know if Gary's still on, but Gary is passionate about rivers, especially the Verde River. So tell your story and talk about the bills and really have a good time with it. I know, it sometimes can seem a little bit overwhelming, but I encourage you to enjoy yourself. The legislators, they are there to represent you. And so, you know, let them know what you think. All right, well, we'll wrap it up. Have a great rest of your evening. Don't hesitate to reach out. My email is, you know, on a lot of the things that are going out. I'll also make my mobile number available, and I think each of your team leaders will be doing that as well. So if something comes up, you know, you can let us know. And thanks so much for participating in Environmental Day. And again, if you can't make it that day, you know, get in touch with me. I'm happy to have you join me down at the Capitol another day. And even if you do come, it's important to keep coming, keep talking to your legislators, meet them in district. So yeah, don't, it's not a one-time thing. All right. Thanks so much. I'll let you go, get your dinners, and we'll see y'all on Tuesday.
Thanks, Sandy.
Yeah, bye now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.